by the sons of Warvan, you shall be avenged.
Too big for his bed, nothing seems to fit.
What do you mean?
Flip the toggle twice?
No, don't do that. Just flip it again, now, one time, flip it.
Roger.
Huh?
Request vector, over. What?
Flight 209er, clear for vector 324.
We have clearance, Clarence.
Roger, Roger. What's our vector, Victor?
That little exchange from Airplane never fails to make me smile and laugh, and it's actually something I've said in my own life more times than anybody around me would like to believe. Hey, Mark here, the Cinemaniac. You watching the show, you probably like flicks. You've probably seen a flick. You may have even flicked a Bic once, or you may have portrayed flick in a regional production of A Christmas Story, thus making us the titular Cinemaniacs. It's been a little while because we've been away for holidays and things, and the office has been closed and the studio has been closed, and I've been off and here and there and everywhere. But I've actually watched movies between then and now that are still in current release. Some of them may have even been nominated or won Golden Globes last night. I didn't watch. So I'm just going to really kind of dive into this with these films. Some of these may wind up being Oscar nominees. Actually, we're getting in the nitty-gritty when a lot of award fodder films are released, usually toward the end of the year, sort of December, January area. A lot of films get released that are award-worthy, or people hope they're award-worthy, and that's what I'm going to be talking about predominantly. So we'll switch over here to this other camera. This is a based on a true story film. Now, usually I go to this website called History versus Hollywood, which I love, after I watch a film that's allegedly based on a true story to see how accurate it was. This is one that I was unable to do that for. They just didn't have anything up. So we're going to say based on a true story. This tells the tale of several female news reporters at Fox News in the early 2000s, I want to say, who fell victim to workplace harassment and worse, and an overall very unpleasant work experience and atmosphere under the leadership of Roger Ailes in this film portrayed by John Lithgow. Here we have what turned out to be, once it was exposed, a bombshell. So that trailer tells you nothing about what the movie's about, but I like that. I'm a big fan of, that's a teaser trailer. That's enough to get you intrigued about something and want to find out more. Usually you get a teaser trailer that's relatively short, gives you a taste of a film or an intriguing image or something that leads up to something making you want more. Then you follow it up with a full-length trailer that arguably generally tells you more than you want to know about a film. And then there's usually another trailer after that that fills in all the gaps plot-wise that wasn't in the previous trailer. So Bombshell, we have, and I'm going to get the names wrong because I don't remember, because funny enough, I'm not a Fox News watcher. This was a true story that happened. It was in the news. It was several prominent Fox News anchors who came out one after the other saying that they had been sexually harassed in the workplace, or been made to feel like if they exchanged favors with the top head of the news department, they might see their careers advance. And you have three actual people, based on actual people. You have one character that's a composite for this film. The Margot Robbie character, the young, new, eager to please, very right-wing, very Christian staffer who would like to be on-air talent, finds herself in very uncomfortable positions trying to get to that place. That was a character that was created for the film. She was, I guess, an amalgam of reports and incidents from various people sort of condensed into one. But the others were based on actual people, and the makeup in this film is really well done. You have Charlize Theron as, is her name in here? No, she isn't. So Charlize Theron as one of these actual living people who doesn't look or sound much like Charlize Theron through the majority of the film. And it was done through simple, slight prosthetic appliances to her face and makeup, and just how she speaks and carries herself. She really... People may discount Charlize Theron because she's good looking, but she's a damn good actress, and she can lose herself in parts, and not just Monster, where she completely transforms her appearance. She just becomes whoever she's supposed to be. And in this film, she is a upstanding, go-getter lawyer, Fox News anchor, or show host or whatever you want to call it, who bit by bit comes to realize that she needs to be speaking up for things that happened to her in the past. And you also have Nicole Kidman, who is in the same position, where she is somebody who's a big star there who is not having a good time because she's not playing ball. And it's just really interesting to see how it all unfolded. It's an incident that I was aware of from the news vaguely, but I hadn't really followed any of it. So this sort of fleshes all that out. They do come up right at the beginning of the film, which I've never seen before, where they say certain people are playing actual people in this film, and occasionally you'll see actual footage of these people. Usually that's something you see at the end of the film. It was really interesting to me to see that before the even opening titles of the film came up. But this is extremely well done. It's extremely uncomfortable at times. It plays sort of like a thriller, because a lot of it is, who is going to say something? What will the repercussions be in their workplace or for their career in saying something? A lot of this gets into the legal wrangling of how the information was going to be released and who was going to say what and how it was all going to play out. And it's interesting. It's timely. The issues that it arises, that it brings up, are things that are going on all the time. Women's place in the workplace, women's female rights, equality in the workplace, pay scale, treatment, all that stuff. And the caliber of acting, this is very high. John Lithgow, John Lithgow in what you would call in the old days a fat suit and makeup as Roger Ailes it doesn't look fake. I always have a keen eye for makeup. When somebody's made to look old, it usually looks fake because the skin and the musculature doesn't work right and doesn't move right. But in this film, other than the sort of excess chin that was given to Nicole Kidman in the film, it all looked real. It all looked like these were just the people you were looking at, and that helps to not take you out of the movie. There are various people that also in the film that are pretty recognizable as various, Fox News personalities and newsmakers and things like that, but it really focuses on the three women, and it's really, really well done. I would highly recommend seeing this in the theater. I don't think this is probably going to linger in the theater unless it does get Oscar nominations. That may boost its box office and make it a bit more, give it a bit more longevity than it otherwise will have. But this is the kind of thing that is a smart movie for grown-ups that probably will get pushed out by dumb movies for kids week to week as they come out. That's in theaters now, and that's Bombshell. And that was directed by Jay Roach, funny enough. Jay Roach, who's a friend of my former TV co-host, Tom Cook. Jay Roach, who is best known for directing the Austin Powers movies, is the guy who makes this really serious, timely, semi-political historical piece. I don't know. It was really well done. It was a nice surprise, frankly. So now we move on to this other camera that it so kindly set up for me to have more than one camera to talk to. And we talk about another film that deals with many, funny enough, I put them in the order on the show because I saw them in this order in the theater. I saw Bombshell, and then I got up out of my seat at the Alamo, and I went to the next movie and sat down and watched the movie we're going to talk about. This is a new film from Greta Gerwig, who is an actress, but also a director. She directed Lady Bird a year or two ago, which was maybe my favorite movie that year. Really, really fine film. Same star who was in Saoirse Ronan, I believe, is how you pronounce her first name. She was the star of Lady Bird. She's the star of this film, an adaptation of the famous Louisa May Alcott novel. And you think, do we need another film based on this book that has been made again and again and again? Every decade or two, we get another film, either for TV or for theatrical release, that's based on this book. We've got it. We can rent those. Do we need to see it again? Sometimes the answer is yes, if it's done in an interesting or different way, or just fresher faces that an audience may pay attention to. So you have the tale of the March sisters, the sisters who grew up together against, strife and trials and tribulations and wanted to make their way in the world. I don't have a really clever way to introduce this, so this is Greta Gerwig's take on Little Women. So the answer to the question, do we need another version of Little Women, as I sort of indicated earlier, is yeah, if it's going to be as good as this, we do. This was really, really well done. This is, again, Greta Gerwig, who had done kind of small films-ish up to this point. This film doesn't feel small at all. I mean, it's not like epic battle scenes or anything like that, or, the shot in Gone with the Wind when you see the soldiers in the field for miles and miles. It's not anything like that. But this is, it's got a great look to it. It's got a good production quality. So it feels authentic to the time period in which it is set. It feels authentic to what I imagine the book is like. It doesn't do anything rash in terms of modernizing the story for new audiences, other than it is fairly nonlinear. It's Saoirse Ronan is Jo March, and she's gone off from the farm or the old homestead to become a writer in the big city. At the time, female writers were not having an easy time of it, so she is writing under a man's name or writing under another name, or trying to do the best she can. I could be totally wrong on that man part. It's been a couple weeks. But she's trying to become a writer and strike out on her own and not strike out. And it's her sort of reflecting back on what led her to that point. So the film does jump around in time quite a bit. And there are times where I'm no genius, despite what others may say. There were times where the jumping back and forth in time, it took me a second to figure out where I was, if I was in the present of the film or the past for these people. But it was only a moment. And it was really cleverly done, the way memory works. We're jumping between various memories and times that connect to each other. Pretty effectively done, I thought. Everybody in it's really good. I mean, there's some pretty familiar faces. You've got, again, Saoirse Ronan, if you've seen the other films she's been in, but you've got Laura Dern, who just won a Golden Globe last night for another film that I guess I talked about last week. And if I haven't, I'll talk about it next week. There is Bob Odenkirk, who I did not expect to see in this film. I still think of him from Mr. Show, even though he's done a lot since then. Timothée Chalamet, and what's her name? Emma Watson from the Harry Potter movies. Everybody in it's outstanding. And the costumes are great, and the production design is great, and it's photographed gorgeously. And it's at its baseline, it's a really good drama that I think any age could enjoy. But also, it does get back to some of that stuff in Bombshell. It is, again, about women struggling to just be what they want to be in a world where they're not supposed to do that, and breaking out against the societal norms of the time, and trying to follow their dreams when they're expected to not have any. And some of that is still very relevant for anybody watching it today, but even beyond all that, it's just a good story. It's a story, obviously, that's stood the test of time, because however many years later, we're still seeing movies made about it that are successful and good and award-worthy, which I think this is. So I could go on and on about Little Women, but I have 7 more films to talk about, so I'm not going to do that. But let me say, I highly recommend, if you can find a multiplex that has Bombshell and Little Women, whichever order, do a double feature. Double features are fun anyway. But both of these are good films. And you might say, as often people do, I'll watch that at home when it comes out on video. You can do that. Very easy. Easier than it's ever been to do that. But when you're at home, there are distractions. There's the phone, your phone, there's everything you see around you, there's people coming and going, there's whatever. You can pause it, you have control over it. There is a lot to be said, as far as I'm concerned, about sitting in a movie, relaxing, turning off your mind and floating downstream, letting everything just happen in front of you, and you're just a passive viewer, and you can't get up. You have to pay attention to it. And ideally, in a theater, there are no distractions, and you just watch it, and reality blurs, and it's you and the film, and it's an experience, much more so than at home, no matter how big your TV is. Anyway, not that there's anything wrong with big TVs. Next up, we have a film that I didn't think I would be seeing in the theater. I was very excited to be able to see this in the theater. This is the 4th film in a series of Hong Kong martial arts dramas that have been going on for a decade or more. I couldn't tell you when the first one was, but they've been going for a while. They tell the story of the man. He's best known in film, martial arts, whatever you want to call it, history, as being the man who was Bruce Lee's martial arts teacher. His name was Ip Man. He's portrayed by Donnie Yen, who's actually from Boston, relatively local boy here. And there's been a series of these films that sort of, kind of with a heavy dose of fiction, tell the story of this man's life, including his interactions with Bruce Lee, but it's really not much about that until now. The previous film, I believe, was called Ip Man, The Final Fight. Could be wrong about that. That had him fighting Mike Tyson at one point. So the shark, if not having been jumped, you were eyeing your trajectory over the shark at the point you bring Mike Tyson into a martial arts film. But we have a new chapter in the Ip Man story. This time, Ip Man comes to America. He comes to America both to see Bruce Lee in his first major exhibition at an American martial arts tournament, and he also comes to America to help find a school that is willing to take his troubled son, who no schools in Hong Kong want anymore, under their wing so that he can get an education and have a good life. Unfortunately, he's been diagnosed with cancer, so time is running out for Ip Man, and this film is appropriately titled Ip Man 4: The Finale. So I don't know how wide a release the Ip Man films have ever had in this country. I think probably maybe towns that had, and I say town, by town I mean major metropolitan areas, who have large Asian populations probably get these. So that's where I saw it. I happened to be in New York last weekend, the week before, and the AMC in Times Square had this, and I said, I want to go see an Ip Man movie, so I did. I didn't think I'd have the chance. So I've loved the Ip Man series. The first two movies are really good. I watched the first Ip Man. I was a fan of Hong Kong martial arts films late 80s into the 90s, which is when they were at their peak, after the Bruce Lee era. And things kind of slid in the 90s. A lot of the martial arts, or a lot of the good Asian filmmakers went to Hollywood. They left when China took over Hong Kong, and the movies just kind of started to ape American films, which meant bad camera work, bad editing, a lot of CGI, and just I didn't have any interest in them. Then the first Ip Man came along, and I was like, somebody still knows how to make these movies. And I loved it. And the second one came along, and it was really good, and it balanced the fu with really good drama, really good acting, and just good scenarios. 3 got a little silly, like I said. And then we have 4. So the plot is not the most compelling. He needs to find a school for his kid to go to. That's not thrilling. But luckily there are bullies, and somebody needs to deal with bullies. And as you see in that trailer, there's a great scene, one of my favorites in the film, where Ip Man shows up. There's an Asian girl being bullied by a bunch of white kids, and he basically shows them, sort of in schoolmaster style. Like if you had a teacher at school who was allowed to touch you on your person to correct you, and they knew fu, this might be how it would go. Maybe not your ideal way of it going, but it would certainly be fun to watch, and it was. The martial arts in the film are very good. The fight scenes are really well done. The problem is, the Caucasian acting in this film leaves everything to be desired. You see, I don't know if you watch a lot of these films, but I do. Traditionally, when they needed white people to be in a martial arts film, they would just grab anybody off the street, because the people who are watching it in Chinese, they don't know what this person is saying, and it'll be subtitled, and if you're kind of a weak actor, you're just there to do a little something and then leave. When you're there to hold up half the movie and you're not a good actor, somebody like me who speaks English is going to notice that, and it kind of sucks. So Ip Man 4, when it was just the Chinese actors, it was a lot of fun. And you have Bruce Lee in this movie. You have somebody playing Bruce Lee in this movie who does a pretty good job, and he does some fight scenes. They were excited to get Bruce Lee in one of these movies finally, so they did. And the fight scenes were really well done, and they were fun and funny, and really well performed and shot and cut. They still know how to do it. But then you go back to the white people, and it's terrible, and it's bad and cheesy. And a lot of the storyline is about racism. It's about the early 60s and the Chinese community dealing with the white community, and it's about an Asian Marine who wants to introduce Chinese Kung Fu into the Marines' workout routine and all of that. And they go with judo. No, they go with karate. So it's the classic, kind of funny at this point, martial arts thing of your kung fu is no good, my karate is best. It's a lot of that, which is, in this day and age, is just, unless you're playing it for laughs, it's kind of silly, especially when it's coming out of a white actor who's not an actor. So ultimately, I hate to say it, but I really kind of didn't like Ip Man 4. The fu is great. Like if you get this at home, or if you get this on a disc or something, and the chapter marks are right where the martial arts is, have an exciting half hour. But I really wouldn't recommend anybody go to the theater to watch all of this. And it's a damn shame, because Donnie Yen is great. You might know him as the blind monk in Rogue One. I was excited to see him get that role. But this is not good. I say if you're curious about the Ip Man thing, watch 1. If you like it, watch 2. If you really like it, watch 3. And then just consider it a trilogy. That's what I would say. Okay. Speaking of Chinese Kung Fu, Adam Sandler is back. Sadly bereft of Kung Fu. He is back in not his first dramatic role. He did Punch Drunk Love. But in a film that everybody is lauding as his breakthrough as a non-comedic actor. If you ask me, he's been a non-comedic actor all his career. This is a film where he plays a man with a serious gambling addiction, so serious that it is endangering his life constantly. He is a diamond merchant, gem dealer in New York City, and he is running from many people who want something from him in Uncut Gems. So I saw this 2 days ago, and I had been hearing people going crazy for it. Let me roll back a little bit. I go to the Alamo a lot. I go to the movies a lot. And occasionally there's a trailer for a movie that plays in front of everything. Every time you go to the movie, you see that trailer. Now, for a normal person who goes to the movies maybe once a week, maybe once a month, maybe a couple times a year. Not a big deal. When you're seeing, like me, 2, 3, 4 movies a week, and you see that same trailer in front of everything, you start to hate that movie. And Uncut Gems was one of those. One was Knives Out, and ultimately I didn't think it was all that great. I thought it was okay. And Uncut Gems was another where I was turning against the movie because I was so sick of the trailer. So finally I saw it. For me personally, it does not warrant all of those insane critical accolades that it's been getting, or at least that were played in that commercial. It did not blow my mind. I did not think Sandler was a revelation. I did not think the movie was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. Certainly would not call it a masterpiece. For people who saw it and got that out of it, great. I'm happy. I'm always happy when anybody likes anything. If it's something I don't like and you like it, great. I'm glad you had a good time. I didn't dislike it. I kind of had gone in with a little bit of a chip about the trailer because I was tired of it, and a little bit of a, really? It's that good? And I didn't think it was. I wouldn't have put it in my top 10 for the year, like a lot of people have. So basically, what is the story? Sandler, the movie starts kind of out of the gate. You get a little bit of a setup, which reminded me a lot of Diamonds Are Forever, funny enough. You start with these people, miners in Africa, digging out a gem, this giant hunk of rock that has all these multicolored stones inside it. And they gaze into it, and you get this cosmic, to me, kind of pretentious, journey through these gems that wind up turning into the journey out of a out of, what do you want to call it? The kind of scope they put inside people, medically, it comes out of his colon, which I thought, oh, isn't that clever and cute? The anus right from the beginning of the film. But once that happens, you see Adam Sandler's character is this guy he's in the diamond district or the gem district or whatever of New York, and he's run afoul of people who want money from him because he's a gambling addict. He's constantly placing bets. And what this film is a very tense, very nonstop Adam Sandler's character trying to juggle all of these people he has wronged who want something from him, trying to maintain a relationship at home with his wife and kids. His marriage is about to go. Trying to maintain a relationship with his girlfriend on the side. Trying to maintain a relationship with his bookie. Trying to maintain a relationship with the thugs who are wanting to hurt him and collect money that he owes them. And trying to run a business and trying to play all these angles. And he has Kevin Garnett from the Celtics plays himself, and he comes in and Sandler's trying to sell him some goods. He wants this gem that may be worth, I guess they say in the film, it's 3,000 or 4,000 carats and so many dollars per carat, and he thinks it's a $1-point-something million gem, and he's trying to use that to auction that to make a lot of money to pay off his debts and get himself out of hock and set everybody up who's in his family. It's very complicated. It's a lot of moving parts that do not stop moving until the last minute or so of this film. It reminded me a lot of other movies that I've seen, and I think that is why I'm not going crazy about it. Sandler is fine. He's good. He plays the role well, but I never forgot he was Adam Sandler. I kept feeling like he was Adam Sandler in an Adam Sandler movie without the yelling quite so much. You have some interesting other people, and you have... let me look. Sorry, I have to. Lakeith Stanfield, who you may remember from Sorry to Bother You, he's quite good as sort of this runner or helper for Sandler, who's not totally dependable, but essential. You have, not Bruce Lee, that was it, man. Idina Menzel, you have Eric Bogosian, you have Judd Hirsch, you have John Amos in like the world's smallest cameo as John Amos, which is a pretty funny scene. There is some humor in the film here and there. It is a little salacious here and there, but it is mostly just this breathless race through various places in New York and places in this guy's life over the course of, it can take place over the course of more than a day or two. And it's just, you wonder where this is going to end for this guy. You kind of know it's probably not going to end well, because every time you think he's doing something, it reminded me of a movie called The Gambler that James Caan did about a gambling addict, and it was remade pretty well, I thought, as a kind of a different movie with Mark Wahlberg a couple years ago. It reminded me a lot of that, where you have somebody who's a gambler and they're deeply in debt and they do something and they're like, oh great, now I'm out of this. But I think I'm just going to put that money on another bet rather than paying off this guy who wants to kill me. And it's this endless series of bad decisions that you can see coming a mile away. It's kind of sad. It's very tense. It's very depressing. It's kind of grim at times. Certainly not a movie for kids or those with tender sensibilities, but it's good. I just didn't see it as being brilliant and a masterpiece. I think those are words that you kind of want to be sure about. I kind of wonder, and again, if you think that about this movie, I'm glad you had that reaction to it. But I kind of feel like the people who are saying this haven't seen a whole lot of movies, or haven't seen a lot of movies that go back very far, because I feel like I've seen better that covers the same ground, or I've seen a lot of films that this reminds me of. Anyway, Uncut Gems is out there. It's award fodder. You may see Sandler in the film up for Oscars, possibly. There's a lot of talk about that. And it's actually getting a wider release than I thought. This is an A24 release. They gave us things like Midsummer and a lot of award-worthy films, edgy films. Edgy too, this movie, edgy, I guess. I don't know. It seemed kind of wanting to be edgy more than it actually was to me. But again, that's just my attitude. Anyway, this is playing a lot of places. This is playing a lot of multiplexes. It's playing a lot of small towns. So this may not be as hard to see as I thought it might be when I went to see it. But at any rate, it is out now, and it ain't bad. Speaking of films that are hard to see, this was the last day, I think, I saw this at Film at Lincoln Center in New York City. It was playing for a while. It came back. It was a sold-out show that I saw. It's not going to play very widely. It's probably not going to appeal to a whole lot of people who aren't cineasts, but I'll tell you about it. So, Agnes Varda, I may be mispronouncing that, but, you know, she is a female filmmaker, as opposed to she is a male filmmaker. Agnes Varda is a filmmaker who's been making films since the 50s, I believe, or 60s. Art films, dramas, documentaries, all sorts of things. It's a name I've heard for a while from a lot of friends, but I'd never seen any of her films. But I went to go see this film we're going to talk about. This is a film by Agnes Varda, about Agnes Varda, that basically tells her life story, her inspirations, or not her life story, tells the story of her work as a filmmaker, what inspired her, sort of the story behind some things, a lot of clips, a lot of dialogue from the woman herself. So appropriately enough, it is entitled Varda by Agnes. So I have been a regular at the Alamo Drafthouse in Yonkers, New York for a few years now. And I was never able to attend any of the Varda screenings that they had there over the course of a year or two. It was just timing. I live far away. But I was always very curious. And it was Varda for a while. And I was like, enough with the Varda. Who is this? I don't know who this is. Why is everybody talking about her so much? And I hadn't pursued seeing any of the films yet. Now, Film at Lincoln Center has been running, still is, I think, for some of January, like all of her films. Not a small number. And my lady and I went to go see this documentary because it was really hard to see, and she wanted to see it, and she'd seen a lot of Varda films, and I was like, great. So for some viewers, this would be, for most viewers, let's say, who were in the theater with me that day, this was a retrospective and a reminiscence of the work of Agnes Varda. For me, it was an introduction. And it worked great as an introduction, because now I want to see most of these films. It doesn't really give away a lot about the films. It's really, this film is based around what looks to be a talk that Agnes Varda would give at various cinema societies or museums or places around the world. It's her basically, you cutting back and forth between her and voiceover and her at a chair and a table in front of an audience, talking about just her journey through film, basically. And it goes from a lot of, some narrative film to experimental film to nouveau vogue, I read, to documentaries, her discovering video cameras, portable video cameras, digital cameras, and what that allowed her to do. It gets into art installations that she did, and it was fascinating. And I'm going in totally dumb. Like, I don't know. I know the name. I know that she was a French filmmaker and a couple of the film titles, but I didn't know anything. And I thought it was really interesting. It was very warm. It was very funny. The woman clearly is brilliant, just in terms of how she looks at the world, what she does with a visual medium to sort of let others see how she sees the world. And it was quirky and very, very fascinating. So again, I'm going to tell you all that about a movie you can't see. I don't know how easy this film is to see. If you live in a more major metropolitan area, this may come to some of the art house theaters. This undoubtedly will be available online probably within the next few months, but I believe currently it is still only a theatrical film that is not playing terribly far and wide. But I liked it a lot, and it makes me really want to see from what I saw in the documentary, the majority of this person's work. So more films on my list to watch. But Agnes by Varda by Agnes, I liked it a lot. Now we move on to home video. We move on to that which you can see on the video service, channel, format, platform, device, whatever of your choice. Beginning with a film that, again, won a Golden Globe last night for the lead actor. We'll go over there, shall we? Welcome back to my TV clubhouse. We have, based on a DC Comics property, not going to say the character name. This is a film, this is very interesting. This is something we haven't really seen the likes of too much before. This is a character who is the biggest villain in the Batman films. Every time there's a new Batman, we have to see this character again, because Batman never had dealt with anybody else. We've seen him portrayed by people like Cesar Romero, Jack Nicholson, Jared Leto. Joaquin Phoenix in this film portrays a man who is losing it. He is unhappy in life. He does not have a firm grasp on his sanity. He has mental issues. He performs as a clown. This is, I believe, 1981 New York City is where this film is set. Sorry, 1981 Gotham is where this film is set. And we see this man just unravel slowly over the course of the film. He goes from sort of a living with his mother at home, unhappy, unsuccessful in life, love, and work clown, literally, to an unhinged, murderous, giggling maniac known as the Joker. Shocktober, as I like to think of it. So I was saying this is very different for a comic book movie or a DC movie in that it's not based on established DC canon or lore. It's a story that was made up for the movie, to my understanding. How he becomes the Joker in this film was created for this film. So this is sort of like they do this in comics all the time. They do a one-shot or they do a limited series where it's like, let's say Superman was evil, or let's say the Hulk is purple, or he's a little kid, or whatever. So in this one, it is not the Joker that you know. He doesn't become the Joker in the way you've heard from the other movies before. It is a case of mental illness, and we follow just the Joker. This almost could not be a Batman movie, save for the last few minutes of the film. This could easily be, I shouldn't say that. There are ties to the Wayne family in this film, so that's not exactly true, but it's just told in a way that you've not seen before. I do like the idea that, according to the marquee in this film, that the last film young Bruce Wayne saw before his parents were murdered, setting him on the path to become the Dark Knight, was Zorro the Gay Blade. I'd like to think that. I'd like to live in a world where that was true. So Joaquin Phoenix is very good in this. He's this man who is unhinged and severely depressed and suicidal, and he has this problem that either when he's nervous or just certain times occur, he just laughs uncontrollably. So that's where you get the Joker laughing thing. You have Robert De Niro in the film as like a Johnny Carson character. He's not playing Johnny Carson. He doesn't act like Johnny Carson, but he has a New York-based late-night talk show with the rainbow curtain. For all intents and purposes, it's the Tonight Show. And you have a couple people you'd recognize, but mostly it really focuses on Phoenix. It's very dark. It's very grim. It's unpleasant. It's dirty old New York. It's basically Taxi Driver and King of Comedy mashed up with some Joker and DC seasoning put upon it. If you've seen those movies, this movie will seem very familiar. I still thought it was good. I still thought it was one of the better things I saw this year, just because it is just a straight ahead, it's a real movie. It's not a comic book movie. It's not a superhero movie. It's a real movie. It's pretty realistic overall, what happens in this film. And it's interesting to see the real world applied to comic books. It's not done too often. It's like I thought Skyfall was a very good movie beyond being a Bond movie because it played like a real film. It played more real world than most often do. So 2 more movies, 12 minutes. I'm going to wrap it up on Joker. But I thought Joker was really good. Even if you don't like comic book movies, it might be worth taking a look at this. If you do like comic book movies, be aware that this is not an upper. This is not a movie for kids in terms of some of the violence and how brutal it is. And it is dreary, depressing, and not fun. I wouldn't show a kid this movie unless they were maybe a teenager and not depressed. Speaking of depressing, we're going to move on to the next one. You have Robert Pattinson, who was known from the Twilight movies. And speaking of Batman, wow, the connections. He's actually going to be the next Batman in some Batman movie, I hear. And Willem Dafoe played two people who are on a remote island in the sea in one of those tall phallic things that make sure boats don't crash into it. They are the keepers of the Lighthouse. Another film that is on a lot of critics and friends' top 10 of the previous year, 2019 list. Very artistic. Black and white, 4:3, meaning it's square, which is not how movies are shaped anymore. I always kind of wonder when somebody chooses to shoot a film 4:3 these days, knowing that it is not the shape of any screen anymore. It always feels like you're just being difficult when you do that. Unless you're trying, like The Artist did that, I believe, because it was trying to emulate silent films, and that's how those were shot. At any rate, it's set back in the olden days. I couldn't tell you a year. I'm going to guess 1800s, early 1900s. Desolate lighthouse island, two guys who have to just sort of pass the time and deal with weather and the elements and the equipment they have to deal with, and isolation and limited resources, and fall upon drink and madness. Basically, to cut to the chase, this film, these guys kind of go crazy. And it's very much an art house film. This is very odd. It's gruesome and weird and hallucinatory and strange and gross and I would say tedious at times. Stark black and white photography, really nicely photographed. Good performances, but for me, I just got tired of it. I thought it was kind of an art wank, frankly. I was with it up to a point, and then after just endless drunken screaming and singing and every bodily fluid you might see somewhere, it just felt like, okay, yeah, you're edgy, fantastic. Is there a story to be had here at all? Or am I just going to watch these two guys go at each other and whatever? So I didn't really like The Lighthouse. I thought it was well done. I thought the acting was really well done, the two performances, and I thought it was really well photographed, and certainly probably was not easy film to make. But as far as entertainment goes or enlightening me, it was one of those movies where I was done before it was, and I just wanted it to stop. So your mileage is going to vary. I think if you like challenging artistic art house films, this is probably going to satisfy you. If you're more of a mainstream film goer, this may puzzle you. If you're somewhere in between, let me know. movies@CheshireTV.org. I do like to hear from folks, or comment on Facebook. I'm sure probably the majority of people watching this who saw The Lighthouse liked it a lot more than I did, but it's just my opinion. You know what Dirty Harry said about that. One more film left on home video. This is a new release. This is out now from Dark Sky Films, who's been for a long time, or was one of the leading distributors of horror on Blu-ray and DVD. Really interesting re-releases and original releases, and they pick up, like in the case here, a new film is getting its maiden video release via Dark Sky. You have a man portrayed by the musician CM Punk, who is the proud owner of a big, gigantic, old, dilapidated house. And he is there ahead of his pregnant wife to sort of fix it up, get it ready for the wife and the baby, and, kind of hang around this small town and get to know its people while he goes. And unfortunately, everybody kind of is a little dubious about this house that he bought. It seems like this house has passed. Not necessarily a good one. And strange things start happening as he is trying to fix this house that tends to ooze various things and fall apart on him. And little things in the corner of his eye kind of catch his attention. Luckily, he has a really nice, attractive neighbor or townsperson show up who wants to help him take care of some things in this house. And for better or worse, he finds out that she is the girl on the third floor. It's a film I had heard of from friends watching it. It's Blu-ray hits this week, tomorrow, as of this is Monday, tomorrow, Tuesday. But I think it's been available streaming for a little while. Maybe it was Shudder, maybe it was on demand. So some friends of mine had already seen it. Really well made. This looks like a theatrical film for the most part. Beautifully shot, very atmospheric. I love movies that take place in one place and spend enough time in the nooks and crannies of that place, you kind of can see the geography. You kind of feel like you're there. And this movie did that really well. Our lead, CM Punk, as they call him, quite good. I knew the name from music, but I'd never seen him in anything before. He plays very Bruce Campbell in this movie. Like, this feels kind of Evil Dead 2 a lot of the time. Like, I went in thinking this was going to be a really heavy horror film, and it's pretty funny a lot of the time. It does get serious, it does get gruesome and creepy at times, but there are moments where it's very funny. And it is this guy getting just spewed in the face with all kinds of goo and reacting very, very Bruce Campbell to it. To the degree where I said, if you had to recast Ash in a movie, he might not be too bad. He's very tattooed, but he might not be too bad. Yeah, everybody in this is quite good. It's really well shot and lit and cut and scored. I was with it, again, up to a point, and then it didn't totally work for me as a horror film. I mean, it was, when it wanted to be funny, it was. And it wanted to be gruesome, it was very effective. Like, the gore and the makeup effects are really well done. So I think if you like horror movies and you want to give it a chance, if you like haunted house movies or creepy films, very small cast. There's only about like 5 people in this movie that you see repeatedly. And it may or may not take place in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, interestingly enough. We had a discussion off air a minute ago as to whether the Lighthouse may have been possibly shot partially in New Hampshire too. So that's where I record the show, just so you know, where I was born and grew up and work currently. Anyway, I thought Girl on the Third Floor was pretty good. Not great. Ultimately, some of the isms about it in the end left me a little cold, but I thought it was fine. So anyway, that's all I have to discuss today. We're running out of time rapidly, so I'm going to say I will be back next week talking about 1917. I'll be seeing that this weekend. Who knows if I'll be seeing anything else. Maybe I'll do an hour on 1917. And I will bid you a fond farewell. I am Mark. I am the Cinemaniac, and I will see you at the movies. Bye.